You know the problem with making a lot of money? That you can spend it even faster. And if you don't, ask some of the NBA guys who have ended up bankrupt after making fortunes that you or we would live with for generations. But you better not take any chances. Or do you think it's a good idea to face any of these guys over 6 feet tall and ask them what they've done with their money? You'd better look at this report and draw your own conclusions. But don't give up on us before the end, and we'll give you a ranking of the worst spenders in our favorite basketball league. It may sound a little morbid, but that's us. A study by the NBA Players Association states that 60% of players in the US League are bankrupt 5 years after retirement, the worst being Scottie Pippen and Latrell Sprewell. Latrell Sprewell is broke. The US media reported that the former NBA shooting guard has had to sell his Milwaukee home to pay off $1.3 million he has accumulated in debt. It sounds very curious that a player whose earnings in his career are estimated to have reached $96 million should go through economic problems, especially when, in 2005, he decided to retire by dropping a $21 million offer for 3 seasons from Minnesota. If even he said, "I'm not satisfied with that offer, I have to feed my kids." But Sprewell is not an isolated case. A time ago, a representative from the NBA Players Association came to Toronto to give a lecture on financial issues to the Raptors squad. And in that conversation, a shocking fact came up. 60% of the league's players are broke 5 years into their careers, which is incredible considering that the average salary in this competition is $6 million a year. Roy Hinson, a former NBA player who belongs to the same association, says the problem may be that there are many players who have many cars, many mansions, take care of their families, their friends, and there comes a time when the checks stop coming. He thinks that 60% is too much to describe the situation. By contrast, Jason Capono, an active basketball player, thinks it's possible. Quote, "I've seen NBA players who have 2 different cars to drive every day. Yeah, 14 cars." End quote. Capono says he not only finds such abuse of daily spending absurd, but also believes that most of the millionaires he knows want their entire environment to have the same standard of living as they do. They start off by giving a few gifts, and then end up buying mansions, expensive cars, furs, and even money to maintain a standard of living for all their friends. And there's no pocketbook that can stand up to that. Scottie Pippen, a faithful teammate of 6-time NBA champion Michael Jordan, who was voted one of the top 50 players in history, has squandered the nearly $120 million he earned in his career, recently playing 2 games in Finland to make some cash. Business has not gone well for this player, and his ruin is explained by that side. In the last 5 years, he has lost 27 million euros in investment, and the creditors do not stop visiting him after his idea of creating a private airline company with his name failed. In 2000, he lost another 17 million when his personal advisor financed several ruinous businesses with that money. In addition, Pippen has gone on to make deals with unexplained losses, such as selling his 5,700 square meter mansion for $2 million less than he paid. Jason Caffey's case is also terrible. He made $29 million in an 8-year career that ended in 2003. And last year, he filed for bankruptcy, in addition to seeking protection for the many creditors who harassed him, including 7 women with who he has 8 children. Caffey was forced to pawn his 2 NBA championship rings, $10,000, and a Dodge Charger, $34,000, and to ask his mother for a $50,000 loan to pay alimony. But if there's one curious case of ruin, it's Manute Bol. The 2.31-meter-tall former NBA icon of the 1980s lost all his money after financing one of the factions of his country's eternal civil war, the Armed Rebel Liberation Movement. And to survive, he had to participate in boxing matches, and was even the goalkeeper of an ice hockey team. To this day, with his money severely affected, he suffered a serious car accident and is suffering from arthritis. He subsists in a rented house in the suburbs of Khartoum, the capital of Sudan, with his 2 wives, a son, and 14 other relatives. The most curious aspect of the case is that there are 2 players who are ruined even while playing in the NBA, while their source of income remains intact. This is the case of Kenny Anderson, who was one of the best point guards in the league in the 1990s, who in the 1998-99 season declared that he was forced to sell one of the cars in his luxury fleet when he did not receive his 3-month salary. The player later admitted that he owned 8 cars, including a Porsche, a Lexus, and a Range Rover, and that he had sold a Mercedes. More recently, the case of Denver center Nini Hilario is remembered, who in January 2006, with an annual salary of $2 million, discovered that his bank account was in the red, according to him because his manager put too much into his savings. The case of Andre Blatch, a Washington center, is also a case in point. It is said that he slept 5 nights in the Wizards' ward because he had spent all his money and could not pay his rent. Do you think that this tendency to waste is the result of the new times, of the arrival in the NBA of young people with little education and from gangs? Sorry, you're wrong. 2 of the stats of the legendary Celtics-Lakers duels of the 1980s, Cedric Maxwell and Michael Cooper, went through serious financial hardship, although they recovered thanks to their current basketball jobs. We didn't just compete on the court, we also did it in the locker room when it came to having the best car, the best house, or the best suit, Maxwell recalls. We had no limits. We lived day to day. We thought the money would last forever, adds Cooper. Even a superstar like Charles Barkley didn't get out of trouble. Quote, "The day after I was picked in the draft, I bought 6 cars. Moses Malone and Julius Erving picked me up in the locker room and told me to return 5. I returned 2 Mercedes, 2 BMWs, and 1 of the Porsches. However, after 4 years in the league, I was ruined because of one of my agents. Besides, when someone asks you for help, it's very difficult to say no, especially when you're black. I've lent millions of dollars to people I've never seen in my life. If you don't do it, they say, 'Dude, you're no longer one of us. You think you're better than us.' When you're young, those things come into your heart. In the end, I had to stop helping my classmates. I did it when one of them asked me for money for the 4th time for his grandmother's funeral. I had to say to him, 'But how many grandmothers do you have?'" End quote. But even though it seems like the opposite, the spirit of camaraderie is very present in the NBA. Years ago, Shaquille O'Neal paid all the expenses for the funeral of the legendary George Mikan because his family couldn't afford it. Allen Iverson refused to report a member of the Sixers coaching staff who stole a large sum of money from his locker. He didn't even ask for it back. While Isaiah Thomas is said to pay for the schooling of the children of 2 former All-Stars he didn't even meet in Detroit. These are players and former stars who can now afford such gestures. What we can't predict is what they'll do in a few years when their salaries have gone down a lot or they just don't exist anymore. That's why it's important that foundations and support groups exist to prevent these superstars from thinking about their economic future and programming it better. We celebrate this, although we can't stop thinking about the victims who brought it about. But do you want to know who are the 10 NBA megastars who have lost the most money in their careers? We'll tell you, but please don't do it at home. 10. Shawn Kemp. It is estimated that he earned about $100 million in his entire career, but his at least 7 children with 7 different women have ended up burning a hole in his bank account. 9. Scottie Pippen. His total earnings and salary are close to $120 million, but bad business decisions led him to lose $27 million in investments. He ended up running out of money after buying a private plane. 8. Eddie Curry. The 6-year, $60 million contract he signed with the New York Knicks did not prevent the ordeal he experienced at one point in his career. He was accused of sexual harassment, robbed at gunpoint, and lost his girlfriend and daughters in 2 separate murders. He ended up taking out a $580,000 loan in Las Vegas. 7. Derek Coleman, a number 1 draft pick who pocketed about $90 million over his career. He filed for bankruptcy in 2010 with debts to nearly 100 people amounting to $2 million. 6. Jason Caffey. He made over $35 million and was a 2-time champion with the Chicago Bulls, but filed for bankruptcy in 2007 due to the expenses of supporting his 10 children with 8 different wives. 5. Latrell Sprewell. Before retiring from the courts, he turned down a $27 million renovation offer from the Minnesota Timberwolves because he, quote, had a family to feed, end quote. He ended up with a court order prohibiting him from seeing his daughter because of a series of unpaid bills. 4. Vin Baker. He made over $100 million in salary over the course of his NBA career. He currently works as a bartender at a Starbucks store. 3. Allen Iverson. While in office, he earned over $200 million in salary and $154 million in advertising revenue. However, he ended up in court with a debt of $860,000 in jewelry. 2. Kenny Anderson. During his NBA career, he had a revenue of $68 million. At times, he had monthly expenses of $40,000 from his 3 divorces. 1. Antoine Walker. He made $108 million in salary during his entire NBA career, but his poor decisions and unwise companies caused him to declare bankruptcy in 2010. Crazy to think that some players lost so many millions due to the fact that they weren't able to budget the money they made. We hope you enjoyed this video. We post Monday to Friday, so hit the bell icon to get notified when we post. Check out some of these videos we think you'll enjoy. Thanks for watching!